Today I want to talk about The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes. I think, like a lot of people, I've been aware of this book for quite a while now, but it's come to my attention once again because of the recent adaptation. The novel centres around the middle-aged Tony Webster. He's a happily divorced man, which was something quite interesting to read in this text. He one day receives a letter from a lawyer that he has been given an item from the mother of his first girlfriend, Veronica. The novel is tiny, but it is probably one of the most haunting novels I've ever read. It's an examination of memory and of history, both those kind of grand narratives of history, but also our individual life stories and how we edit things out and create new histories of ourselves, and we tell people different versions, but most importantly we tell ourselves different versions as well. The text is kind of split up into two different sections. You have a part which is looking at Tony's early life in sixth form, where he meets the enigmatic Adrian Finn, who is a really big character in this novel. You have a depiction of a close set of friends at sixth form, including obviously Tony and Adrian, but in that narrative there are these quite deep philosophical examinations on history and on suicide. I think that's what stood out to me about that text and why I think it's worth reading, because even though it's this tiny piece of writing, really, it's under 200 pages, it just has so much depth to it. Like a really beautifully written philosophical inquiry into our lives, into humanity and how we create our life story. Tony meets Adrian at sixth form, and then later on when Tony actually goes to university, he meets Veronica. The portrayal of the relationship of Tony and Veronica I think is really interesting, and how Adrian gets involved in all of this. And you have that looking back to his past, and it's actually a past that Tony really edited out of his life, and you now have Tony trying to piece together his memory of that relationship and of his relationship with Adrian, and you're left questioning as the reader how much is true, how much has been edited out, because the wonderful thing about this novel is that there are so many unanswered questions. This text gives very little away to the reader, so it kind of feels slightly like a psychological thriller at times. Because this novel examines how we tell our life story, it's also looking at the idea of an average life and what life means to each of us, and there are some amazing quotes. How often do we tell our own life story? How often do we adjust, embellish, make sly cuts? And the longer life goes on, the fewer those around to challenge our account, to remind us that our life is not our life, merely the story we have told about our life, told to others, but mainly to ourselves. When I was reading this, I had no idea how they were going to be able to adapt this novel, because it's so interior, it's a first-person narrative. And also there's not much going on, really. There are lots of unanswered questions, and how do you kind of portray that without maybe having the viewer just kind of be left feeling a little bit let down or disappointed, because really there's not a lot of information given to the reader, or even Tony, to be honest. Even though the facts are kind of resolved, the reasoning behind everything is still left for the reader to decide. The constant unanswered question actually I think perfectly links to the title itself, The Sense of an Ending. It's only a sense, which means it's probably not the ending. And because of the word sense, there's also this attempt to understand the ending, which again is never completely complete by the end of the text. This is just a book that I have been rambling about and been thinking a lot about. I really had like a book hangover after finishing reading it, which I don't think I've had before to this extent. I think if this has been on your TBR pile for quite a while, pick it up and read it, because I think it's brilliant, to be honest. It's beautifully plotted and written and fascinating, and it will take you about a day to read, probably not even that, but it will then haunt you for weeks, as it's currently doing to me.